I jerk upright, staring around in the darkness, dazed and confused. Just as I attempt to stand up, my wrists refuse to move, stopping me, and that's when I realize that something sharp and cold is digging into my skin. I look down and can faintly see the outline of whatever it is. As I get a little closer, the silver metal starts to gleam, and that's when I can see that a pair of handcuffs is what's around my wrists. Just as I start to yank and pull at them, trying my hardest to slide them over my hands and get free, that's when the door opens and then slams shut again, and two men come walking into the room. Then one of them flicks on the light. One of them, a short, scrawny man with glasses, a pencil mustache, and thin graying hair combed over his scalp to one side, who is wearing a long white lab coat, shoots me a sinister glare. The other, a tall man wearing medical scrubs, is carrying a tray with a needle and a small glass bottle filled with a clear liquid. The man in the lab coat sits down in the chair directly across from mine and meets my gaze, his stare cold and menacing. "Which one is this?" he asks the nurse, not even bothering to make eye contact with the other man while he's talking to him. "Landon, sir," he replies. "So, Landon, where is your brother?" he asks me next. I sit there, remaining silent yet terrified, thinking to myself, what is this all about? Finally, I reply, "I haven't seen my brother in years. He could be dead for all I know." A smirk spreads across the man's face as he narrows his eyes at me. That's not the answer I was looking for. Then he repeats the question, saying it a little more sternly this time, adding some bass to his voice, I guess to let me know that he's not messing around. "I already told you, I haven't seen him in a long time. I don't know where he is. And why are you looking for him anyway?" "Same reason we were looking for you," he answers. Then he gets up so suddenly that the chair slides right out from under him, slams against the concrete floor, and causes me to jump. Then he reaches out toward me, wraps one of his scrawny hands around my throat, and begins to tighten it, lifting me about an inch up out of my chair. "If you don't tell me where he is right now, you're not going to like what happens next." Suddenly, visions begin flashing before me of what appears to be some kind of interrogation room. There's a girl with messy blonde hair who has handcuffs around her wrists. Her eyes are red and puffy, and there are dry tear streaks running down her face. She looks confused, like she doesn't understand what's going on, as well as terrified. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, three men walk into the room, and a moment later, one of them plunges a needle into her neck. Then only seconds after that, the same man who is choking the life out of me right now walks into the room. After a few more seconds pass by, that vision begins to fade and another appears. This time I see a man who is handcuffed and sitting in a jail cell, and the man in the white lab coat is there too. He's talking to this guy, and then he hands the man a pen and a piece of paper. Just as the man is about to sign it, the vision starts to vanish, and I snap back to the moment. Gasping for air, I lift my hands to try and pry the man's fingers from around my throat, but they don't budge. Just then, the nurse takes a step forward and then hands the man in the white lab coat the needle. He grabs it with his one free hand, holds it up right in front of my face, and pushes the top down so that a tiny bit of liquid squirts out. Then he finally lets go of me, giving me only a few seconds to try and catch my breath before he pounds on the table and shouts angrily, "Now I'm only going to ask this one last time. Where is he? Where is Logan?" I look him dead in the eyes and answer, "I don't know." At the same time, I'm thinking to myself, even if I did, I wouldn't tell this crazy man where to find him. Then the next thing I know, he's plunging the syringe into my left upper arm, and that's when my sight goes blurry, and now I'm sitting back in my house, in the living room on the couch, staring into the worried eyes of my mother. "Landon, are you all right?" "Yeah, Mom, I'm fine. I must have just spaced out for a second." "A second? I was calling your name for nearly 5 minutes." "Oh, you were? Well, maybe I fell asleep then." "With your eyes open?" "Yeah, Mom, you know it's not unheard of. Lots of people fall asleep with their eyes open." She looks at me concerned. "Did you have another one of your visions?" I told you I haven't had any of those in a while, I assure her. I wish you would stop worrying so much. Alright, well, dinner will be ready in an hour, she tells me as she starts heading to the kitchen. Okay, I'm going to go up to my room and lie down for a little while. Once I'm inside my bedroom, I close the door, plop down on my bed, and just stare up at the ceiling. I told my parents that I stopped having visions, but actually, I've been having the same exact one every day for the last few months now. And although I know that it's some kind of a warning, I still haven't been able to figure out exactly what it means. My name is Landon Maxwell, and everyone thinks of me as just an average 11-year-old kid. Kind, polite, has a bunch of friends, and although all of those things are true about me, I'm far from average. Growing up, every kid dreams about having superpowers. I know I always wished I had healing powers. That way, whenever I got hurt, the pain wouldn't last too long, and I'd be back to my old self again in no time. Plus, I always wanted to be a doctor, and what would be better than to have the power to heal your patients, especially the ones who aren't actually supposed to make it. But that's not the power I was gifted with. The first time I had a vision, I thought it was just a nightmare. I was 3 years old at the time, and while I was lying in my bed one night, staring up at the ceiling trying to fall asleep, suddenly I saw a man in a mask set a church on fire, and then it started burning down to the ground while a bunch of people were trapped inside trying to escape. Then the next day, I heard my parents talking about how they had seen it on the news, that what I actually saw had really happened. Both me and my twin brother Logan have powers, and our power gives us the opportunity to help people. A few years ago, when I was 8, I learned that my mind can just speed through a vision that I'm having, and within a matter of seconds, I can see all of the different outcomes of the situation. And being able to see the outcome of my visions also gives me the ability to adjust or change them. So if I have a vision that I don't like, I can do something to alter the way that it will turn out. So say that I wanted to kiss a girl. My vision would start off with me doing just that, and then I'd see how it's supposed to end. Then after that, over the next few seconds, I'd see all of the different ways it could play out if I were to do something to change it. If I'm lucky, she could enjoy it and kiss me back. Or some of the worst case scenarios would be that she could slap me across the face, spread a cold sore that she may have, or I could even catch mono, aka the kissing disease. But the more dire that a situation is, the more stressful and intense my visions become. And when I actually physically touch a person, they become even more amplified and vivid. Also, I'm more likely to see a tragic event than something like a person who is about to sit down and eat a donut for breakfast. Well, unless it's the best donut that that person has ever tasted and they experience a life-changing moment while eating it. But so far, nothing like that has ever happened. For a kid, it's pretty difficult and overwhelming to deal with seeing other people's pain and agony, but the older that I get, it's gotten a little easier to deal with the visions. Well, at least for me it has. My mom absolutely hates the fact that I have powers. But I do remember this one time when I was 8 that I did something that made her really proud. It scared her half to death, but she was still proud nonetheless. So I was at the park skateboarding one day after school when I noticed this little girl who looked to be about 6, and she was all alone. She was playing over near the swings, and I assumed that she was just waiting for someone to come pick her up, so I went on about my business. Then, a little while later, when I was getting ready to leave and head home, I saw the little girl again wandering around by the entrance to the park, and I realized that she had forgotten her backpack over near the swings where she had just been playing before. So I start walking over there to grab it so that I can take it to her, and as soon as I place my hand through the loop on top, I get a vision. I see her swinging from the monkey bars at the park, but I can tell that it's not today because the clothes she's wearing are different. Right now she's wearing blue jeans, a purple and pink windbreaker with rainbow-colored flowers all over it, and a pair of light-up twinkle-toe sneakers. But in my vision, she's wearing an orange dress with white sandals. The park looks empty. I don't see anyone except for her and a few teenage boys walking past. Once they disappear out of sight, I hear a screeching sound, like tires breaking very suddenly, and then a white van with tinted windows comes zooming into the parking lot. That's when two masked men jump out and start racing over toward the little girl. By the time she realizes what's going on and tries to run, they've already reached her, and they snatch her up, cover her mouth with a white cloth to muffle her screams, and then force her into the back of the van. I won't go into detail about what occurred in the rest of the vision. All I'll say is that I felt everything that she did. Fear, terror, and pain as they tortured her, and then nothing at all when they decided to kill her. Then all of the possible outcomes raced through my mind next, and I knew that I had to do something to change my vision and help her. So I followed her every day after school for the next week, with my body getting tenser every day, not knowing when the time was going to come that I would have to play the hero. I couldn't sleep at night thinking about that poor little girl and what I knew was going to happen to her if I didn't save her. And then the day finally came. I saw her that morning at the bus stop in her orange dress, so I ran back home, and when I busted through the door, my mom asked what I was doing back there. So I made up some excuse that I had forgotten one of my books. She told me to hurry up before I missed the bus, so I raced upstairs, snuck into my mom's room, and stole her lipstick taser from her purse. I went through her purse a while ago when she told me to grab some lunch money from her wallet one day, and that's when I first noticed it and asked her what it was. And when I took off the lid and pressed the button, it made a loud zapping noise. She snatched it from me and told me that it wasn't a toy, and then explained to me what it was used for. So to me, it seemed like the perfect weapon to stop kidnappers. After that, I shoved it into my backpack, ran back downstairs, and made it back to the bus stop just as the bus was pulling up. Later that afternoon, I followed the little girl to the park. Sweat was pouring down my forehead, and my heart felt like it was pounding out of my chest the entire time. Then, when I saw her swinging from the monkey bars, I rushed over and knocked her down into the wood chips. After apologizing, I suggested that she go into the bathroom to clean herself up. That way, she wouldn't be there when the kidnappers showed up. The good news is that I managed to change what was supposed to happen. The little girl ended up being okay. But the thing about my visions is that I can't alter the way things are supposed to go without there being consequences. So what actually happened that day was that, since I decided to involve myself in that situation, I put myself into danger, and I almost got kidnapped by those men instead of the little girl. When the kidnappers drove around the park in their van, seeing that I was the only kid in sight because the little girl was still in the bathroom, they tried to coax me over. But knowing better, I already had my mom's taser in my hand, with my finger on the button, so when they approached me, I told them to go away and leave me alone. But then they got out of the van, so I used it on one of them when they tried to snatch me up. And then as the other one started to chase after me, I went running down the street screaming, trying to lead them away from the park so that if the little girl came out of the bathroom, they wouldn't see her. When they saw me knocking on the door to the nearest house, screaming for help, they drove off scared. But not before I managed to get their license plate number. That way they'd get caught and not be able to do this to any other kid ever again. They were captured by the police a few hours later. So like I said, my mom was proud of me for saving that little girl, but terrified beyond belief that I was almost taken away from her. I wanted to ease her mind and worry, so shortly after that I started telling her that my visions had just suddenly stopped. My mom was happy to hear it. She told me that God must have chosen me to save that little girl, and that's the whole reason why I was having visions in the first place. She thinks that they must have stopped because I did what I was supposed to do. But the truth is that they haven't stopped. And if I'm not tuning into my own visions, there's constantly a million things racing through my head. You'd be surprised at how much danger is going on in this world. But I'm getting sidetracked. I have to think about my twin brother Logan. I don't know where he is. I haven't seen him in 6 years. We were separated when we were 5. Our biological parents must have placed us up for adoption when we were babies, but I don't really know. I just remember being raised in an orphanage. I can only guess that it had something to do with our powers. Then, when we were 5, Logan got adopted, and I haven't seen or talked to him since. I know it's for the best though, because when the two of us are together, our powers are amplified. That doesn't mean that I don't miss him though. I have visions of him from time to time. I know he's with a good family and that he's happy and safe. My visions just don't tell me his exact location, and I think that it'd be pretty cool if we could communicate with each other through them, but we can't. For as far back as I can remember, Logan and I have always been each other's best friend. But as soon as we were separated, I started to feel numb, empty, and nothing would motivate me. I didn't even care about having powers anymore. I just wanted my brother back. Then, a year later, I was adopted, but I still felt all alone until the day that I saved that little girl's life. And that's when I realized that I could use my powers to do something good and help people. It made me feel like a real-life superhero. I often wonder if he's been having the same vision that I have. I mean, the one of the man in the white lab coat. He's obviously looking for both of us, and I'm pretty sure that it has something to do with us having powers. I also think about those other two people from my vision, the man and the girl that I saw. I wonder if they've already been captured, and if so, are they still being held against their will, or were they able to escape? I know that in order for them to even be there, talking to that man in the white lab coat, they must be just like Logan and me. By that I mean that they must have powers too. I've known for a while now that there are others out there like us, but I've just never come across anyone. And from the vision that I keep having, I know that it's only a matter of time before they capture me. Suddenly the doorbell rings, interrupting my thoughts. Immediately I wonder who it could be. We don't get a lot of company, and Mom usually always lets me know if anyone is coming over. Maybe she ordered pizza for dinner instead of cooking, I think to myself. Then I get up and start to head down the hall to see who it is. When I get about halfway down the stairs, I hear my mom talking to someone. The only thing I can make out is that it's a man's voice. I can't hear what he's saying. So I peek over the banister, and as soon as I catch a glimpse of the man's face, my heart starts to race because I instantly recognize the guy. He's the nurse from my vision with the man in the white lab coat. I knew it was only a matter of time before they came looking for me. I just didn't think it would be so soon. "Landon, would you come down here, please?" my mom calls upstairs. I tiptoe back down the hall to my room, then answer, "Yeah, 1 second, I'll be right there." Then I quickly pack a bag and write my mother a note, keeping it short and simple, but at the same time telling her the truth. "Mom, I'm going to find my brother. Please don't worry about me. I'll be all right. I love you." Then I grab all of the money that I've been saving up over the last year from the shoebox in my closet that I've been collecting it in, climb out my bedroom window, and sneak away into the darkness. Now I'm determined more than ever to find my brother and reunite so that together we can try to figure a way out of this mess. Whether that means going into hiding so that we can stay together, or fighting these assholes and taking them down so that they can stop destroying our lives, the lives of the people we love, and the lives of others who are just like us, which I'm more than prepared to do. The first place I plan on going to look for Logan is the orphanage that we used to live in. I'm hoping that someone who works there will give me the address that he's living at now, or at the very least a phone number so that way I can contact him. I know it's a long shot, but it's all I got. I take my bike that's leaning up against the back of the house and speed away. The orphanage is about a 20-minute drive from my house, so I figure it shouldn't take me too long to get there on my bike. When I arrive, I walk through the front door and approach the lady sitting at the front desk. She sweetly greets me. "Hello, honey. What can I help you with?" "I'm looking for my brother." She gives me a confused look, so I continue. "He was adopted 6 years ago. We both were. We used to live here, and I haven't seen him since. I was hoping you could help me find him by telling me where he lives." "I'm sorry, sweetie, but I'm not allowed to release that type of information, especially not to a minor." I let out a sigh and ask if there's someone else that I can talk to, so she goes to get whoever's in charge. A minute later, she returns with a man who has a scowl on his face, and before I can even say anything, he tells me, "What Miss Louise already told you is correct. We cannot release any information about any of our adopters or the children that they have adopted. Now I'm going to have to ask you to leave before I call your parents." After that, I run off, but not without a plan. I'll be coming back a little later tonight, after I'm sure that the man I just spoke to has left for the evening. So I pick up a few snacks and a drink at a nearby convenience store. Then I go back and hide behind the building that's next door to the orphanage, which is an insurance company that is closed for the day. Then I wait there until I see the man who kicked me out of there earlier today leave and head through the parking lot to his car. Once he drives away and I'm just about to head back into the orphanage, a black SUV with 2 men inside pulls into the parking lot, so I scurry and hide back behind the building until I hear them get out and disappear inside of the orphanage. After waiting another few minutes, I head over there, quietly open the door and then close it behind me. And that's when I catch a glimpse of the same man who showed up at my house just a few hours ago. He's one of the 2 men that just got out of that black SUV. I quickly dart past them as they stand at the front desk talking to the receptionist, and then press my back firmly up against the wall of the dark hallway that I'm now in. The low lights keep flickering, throwing dark shadows across the polished floors. Damn, what am I going to do now? I think to myself. I have to find a way to get Logan's address. The orphanage is dead silent. I guess all of the kids must be in bed for the night. As I peek around the corner, my heart starts to race when I see the receptionist get up out of her chair. Paralyzed with fear, the scent of sweat engulfs me as I watch her begin leading the 2 men down the hallway in the opposite direction. I breathe a sigh of relief as I slip into the room behind her desk. I close the door behind me, but leave it a crack open so that I can slip back out without making any noise that will get me detected. Then I start searching through the shelves and stop when I get to the aisle that has boxes filled with paperwork marked with the letter D. Before we were adopted, our last name was Duran, so I look for the boxes labeled DUR, and there are 2 of them. So I start searching through them, but I don't find anything in the first box, and when I'm almost done going through the second one, that's when I find it. Both the paperwork for Logan and me. I snatch both of our folders out of the box and shove them into my backpack. I'll have to read through them later. I don't have the time to do it now. Then I tiptoe to the door, but just as I open it, I hear footsteps coming down the hallway, and without even thinking, I just dart out of there and go running out the door, but not without being seen. "Hey, get back here!" one of the men shouts after me, but I keep running, even after he starts chasing me. I hop onto my bike and go speeding away down the street as a gunshot rings out and a bullet goes whizzing right past my ear. Then I hear them getting into their car, and I know that they're coming after me. So I ditch my bike in an alleyway and take the back streets all the way to the bus station. Once I'm safe inside, I pull the folder with Logan's information from my backpack and start reading through it. At the top of the 3rd page, I find what I'm looking for. Realizing that his address is not far from where I live, probably about only 20 minutes, I just continue to stare at it over and over again in shock. How could he have lived so close this whole time and I never even knew it, or felt it? How could we have never even ran into each other around town? I close the folder, slide it back into my backpack, and purchase a ticket. I don't have to wait long for my bus to arrive, and when it does, I quickly get in line and get ready to board. Just as I get onto the bus and find a seat, I see a black SUV slowly driving around the parking lot like they are looking for someone. I can't see who's driving, but I can't help but to think it's the same guys from the orphanage who were just chasing me. Thankfully, the bus pulls off a few minutes later. While we're driving, I think about pulling out Logan's folder and reading through it some more, but then I get a vision. It's my mom, sitting at the dining room table crying and showing the note that I left her to the cops. A feeling of guilt washes over me as I push the vision out of my head. I feel horrible for hurting her, but at the same time, I have to do this. Then I lie my head back on the seat, gaze out the window, and begin to think about some of the other times that I was able to use my visions to help people. I remember once that I was in the grocery store with my dad, and this elderly man asked him if he could reach a can of prunes that was sitting up on the top shelf. So my dad reaches up and grabs it, and then hands it to me to give to the man. And just as I do, our hands brush up against each other's, and I had a vision that he was going to be beaten up and robbed on his way home from the store. So I offered him a ride home, but he politely declined. So then I begged my dad to follow him until I was sure that he had made it home safely. At first, my dad gave me a weird look, like, "Why are you offering strangers rides?" But since both of my parents already knew about my visions, after a moment he realized what was going on and agreed to follow him. And about a block from the store, these three teenage boys leaped out from behind a parked car and knocked him to the ground. That's when me and my dad hopped out of our car and I went to make sure the man was okay and help him up, while my dad went chasing after the kids. Then there was this other time that I was just walking down the street, and this girl that was distracted talking on her phone to someone walked past me and bumped right into me. And that's when I got a vision that she was going to be killed by a drunk driver in a car crash. I tried to warn her, whatever you do, don't go to that party tonight. You're going to die. I shouted after her as she went running down the street away from me, looking stunned and terrified. She probably thought that I was some creep stalking her or something. I don't know whatever happened to her. I can only hope that she took my warning seriously. But then there are times when I can only do so much to help someone, because I still am a kid after all. I mean, I can't spend my entire life following people around. Like when I was on vacation with my parents, we were in the Bahamas and I had a vision of this little girl and her family. I saw that they were all going to die in a fiery plane crash on their way back home, and then their plane was going to plummet into the ocean and take weeks to be found. I felt horrible because I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to tell them what I saw because, number one, they probably weren't going to believe me, and number two, it would totally ruin their vacation, and they looked so happy. I knew in that situation that there was nothing I could do, so I didn't say anything, and my vision came true. The reason that I'm bringing all of this up is because that last time I didn't do anything, it has been eating at me ever since. And I told myself that I would never let anything like that happen ever again. And the feeling that I've been getting about this guy sitting across from me on the bus is telling me that he's about to do something very bad. Just then, the bus comes to a stop and the man that's sitting across from me stands up to get off. He starts walking forward, and just as his foot hits the last step to get off of the bus, he turns around, and that's when I get an up-close look at his face. He looks extremely tired and weak. Then he does something really strange. He winks at me. That's when suddenly a vision hits me like a ton of bricks, and it's more powerful and intense than ever before. I see him getting off of the bus at a stop, and then he walks a few blocks and stops when he comes to a cul-de-sac. He stares at each of the houses one by one as he recites the song, Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo. When he finally chooses one, he walks up to it, but instead of knocking or ringing the bell, he twists the knob. And when he realizes that the door is locked, he glances around to make sure that no one's looking. Then he pulls out a credit card and slides it in between the door frame. Once he hears the lock click, he creeps inside and starts heading straight upstairs. And when he reaches the top of the staircase, he makes a beeline straight toward one of the bedrooms. Then he twists the knob, peeks his head around the corner, and pushes the door open, then disappears inside. There's a little girl who looks about 4 years old lying in the bed beneath the covers, and her eyes are closed. But as if she senses the man's presence, her eyes suddenly pop wide open. She squints to see who it is that's in the room with her. "Daddy, is that you?" The man doesn't respond. He just slowly approaches the side of her bed. What happens next causes a chill to run through me. He opens his mouth and his jaw stretches extremely wide. Like I said before, I knew there were others out there who had powers like me, but I never imagined anything like this. Just as the little girl opens her mouth about to let out a scream, his eyes gloss over like whatever is inside of him has fully taken over now. And then in one smooth, swift motion, his body bends abnormally at the hips at a perfect 90-degree angle. When he bends over, his mouth flawlessly engulfs almost her entire body, with the only thing still showing being her kneecaps down to her feet. Hearing her muffled screams in his throat after one swift chomp, her legs from the knee down are the only thing that's left of her, which are now just two bloody stumps lying on her bed. His elongated mouth, that seems more cartoonish, returns to its normal size. The only way I can think of to describe it is by saying that it reminds me of Jim Carrey's character in the movie The Mask, when his head turns into the fox while he's sitting in the nightclub. Then he picks up her two legs from the bed and dangles them in the air like a pair of earrings. His jaw widens again, and then a second later, just like that, they're gone. Before he leaves, he bends down and straightens out the sheets, blanket, and pillow on the little girl's bed. Then he heads into the little boy's room next. He looks to be about 9 or 10. On his way over to the bed, the man bends over and picks up a pillow that has fallen onto the floor. He grips it tightly in his hands, then once he reaches the side of the bed, he stares down at the boy, who's resting peacefully, then places the pillow right over his face, smothering him. The little boy wakes up and his arms start flailing in the air as he desperately struggles to breathe, but the man just presses down even harder. Then the boy grabs at his arms, digging his nails into the man's skin, drawing blood. When he finally stops moving, the man waits a few more seconds before lifting the pillow as he tries to silence his own chuckling. Now towering over the boy's dead body, his jaw starts to expand again, but this time he slowly bends over, positioning himself in that abnormal 90-degree angle, and he starts devouring the boy, swallowing him whole like a snake does to its prey. Hearing the pops and cracks from the force of the man's throat breaking the boy's bones, which I can only guess is helping him digest him better. Once he's done, he makes his way into the parents' bedroom next. They are both lying in the bed fast asleep. The woman begins to toss and turn a little as the man makes his way over to her side of the bed first. As she continues to toss and turn, he slides his hands up both sides of her face, and for a moment I can tell that she thinks it's her husband because she lets out a slight smile, until she opens her eyes. Then, seeing that those hands are attached to the body of the beast that is standing over her, she lets out a blood-curdling scream, which wakes her husband. He jolts awake, reaches for his glasses on the nightstand, and accidentally knocks them to the floor. As he climbs out of the bed to find them, the man twists the woman's head and breaks her neck. By the time the dad locates his glasses and puts them on, it's too late, because when he looks up, he sees the man now only inches away from his face, his jaw already extended and his body poised in that same 90-degree angle, and then he takes a bite out of the man's head and half of his shoulder. With the dad now being out of the way, he makes his way back over to the woman's side of the bed to finish her off. Then he walks back downstairs, looking younger and refreshed now, not like he did on the bus when he appeared drained of energy. When he walks out the front door and down the street, that's where my vision ends. And I tell myself, Landon, I know you're trying to find your brother, but this is one of those times that you've got to do something. That poor family doesn't deserve to die. But the bus has already started driving again, so I hurry and pull the emergency bell and then get off about a block away. I catch up with the man a few minutes later, but keep my distance as I follow him to the cul-de-sac. I don't know what I'm going to do to stop him when he's so much bigger and stronger than I am, but I'm still going to try. That's when I start to recall all of the possible scenarios that ran through my mind when I had my vision, and one in particular stands out to me. The father gets to his gun just in time to shoot the man before he kills his family. I continue to go over the other outcomes until finally I force them all out of my mind when I start to feel dizzy. I can only do it so many times because the more that I do, it starts to drain me, making me feel really tired. The last time I pushed myself too far, I ended up passing out. Once the man is finished with his eeny, meeny, miny, mo ritual, and he breaks into the house, I wait until he closes the door and then I sneak inside behind him and see him making his way upstairs. Figuring that my best bet is to just wake everyone in the house up, I start turning on all of the lights downstairs. Then I run to the kitchen and begin slamming cabinet doors and banging pots and pans together. That's when I hear someone coming down the stairs, so I grab two of the biggest knives there are in the knife block and prepare to defend myself. When the man walks into the kitchen, I hold the knives up in front of me. "Aren't you the kid I saw on the bus? What in the hell are you doing here?" "I know what you are, and I won't let you kill this family. They don't deserve to die. You know what's funny? I felt like there was something off about you. You're just like me, aren't you? I don't respond. You know, I never ate one of my own kind before, he says, right before suddenly lunging at me. But I dodge him, and as he opens his mouth and his jaw enlarges, he takes a bite out of their kitchen table, biting it clean in half. As he leaps toward me again, I swing the knives at him and slice him right in the shoulder with one of them. That's when the dad comes storming downstairs and races into the kitchen with a gun in his hand. He starts shooting, aiming for both of us, because even though I'm trying to help him, he doesn't know what's going on. I manage to get away and scurry out the back door, and as I'm running down the street, I see the other man who has powers too come running out the front as the dad chases after him, still shooting. Terrified but still determined, I continue on to my brother's house, which is now only about a 10-minute walk from where I am, all the while thinking about the man that I just saw back there. A superhero isn't supposed to hurt people. They always find a way, no matter what, in any situation. They're the ones who save the day. But what he just did back there was more like the work of a villain. That man was no hero. And actually, now that I think about it, I've never seen a villain do anything like that. He was more like a demon. I can't believe any powers would make someone do those things. That's probably why that man in the white lab coat is after me and my brother in the first place, because of people like him. They probably think that we are all dangerous. And I just keep thinking how if I was just a normal person and didn't have these visions, tomorrow on the news I would hear about that family back there, but all anyone would know is that they went missing. No one would really know the truth about what happened to them, and the only thing that I would be thinking is that I saw some creepy man on the bus who winked at me. I'd never even know what he actually did. Finally, I make it to the street where Logan's file said that he lived. I walk down the sidewalk searching for his house number, and once I find it, I slowly stroll up the walkway glancing at my watch, thinking, I hope it's not too late and his parents get mad that I'm here. I knock on the door, and as I stand there waiting for someone to answer it, I pace back and forth on the porch, a nervous feeling coming over me. Then I start to hear footsteps approaching, causing a chill to run right through me. For some reason, I'm getting a really bad feeling, like maybe I shouldn't have come here. When the door swings open, there he is, standing there, staring right back at me, with my same black, long, shaggy hair, and all of the same facial features as mine. The emerald green eyes, chubby cheeks, and that mole that we were both born with, his on his left cheek and mine on my right. When we used to live in the orphanage, it was the only way that anyone could tell us apart. After a moment, he looks away and glances up and down the street like he's expecting someone else. Then he looks back at me. I had a feeling you were coming. I need to talk to you. It's really important. Can I come in? He opens the door a little wider and steps aside, inviting me in. Are you sure it's all right with your parents? I ask him. I told them you might be coming. Like I said, I had a feeling. So I walk inside, give him a hug, and then follow him into the kitchen and take a seat at the table. You want something to drink? He asks me as he opens the fridge and sticks his head inside. Do you have any fruit punch? He pulls a pitcher of red juice out and sits it down on the counter while he gets 2 cups from one of the cabinets. Thanks, I say, taking a few sips. So why exactly are you here? He questions. I've been having this vision. I don't know exactly what it means, but I think it's a warning. Aren't all of your visions warnings? Mine always are, he says. Most of the time, yeah, but not always. And you won't believe what I've been through to get here. There are more people out there like us, ones with powers. I just saw one of them. What do you mean? What kind of powers? Bad ones. Anyway, about my vision, there was a man that knows about our powers, and he asked about you. He wanted to know where to find you. So I was wondering, have you been having that same vision? No, I haven't had any visions like that. What did the man look like? He was short and scrawny, and he wore glasses and a long white lab coat, like a doctor or scientist. Just as I finished describing the man to Logan, there's a knock at the door. "I'll be right back," he tells me as he gets up to go answer it. While he's gone, I start thinking about how calm Logan seems to be about this whole situation and how he doesn't even seem that happy to see me. So just as a precaution, I start to go through all of the different scenarios in my head, and all of them end up the same way, with him turning on me. That's when I get up and go running toward the back door. But just as I'm about to go out it, I feel like I just have to say something to him. So I turn around and see Logan standing in the kitchen doorway with 4 men behind him, 3 of them holding pistols and the other carrying a tranquilizer gun, all of them aiming right at me. "How could you do this to your own brother?" I ask as the men start slowly approaching me. "I've been with them for the last 3 years now, and the longer I resisted telling them about you, the more they tortured me, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I won't go through any more pain just to protect you. Just join us, and you will see. Your powers will get stronger," he tells me, sounding cold and robotic. I race out the back door as they chase after me, shooting. "Stop! You're not supposed to kill him," I hear Logan shout after them. Right as I'm about to dart across the street, a car comes speeding down the road and comes to a halt as the passenger side door swings open. The man behind the wheel tells me, "Get in." I give him a look like, "Yeah, right, you're probably with them." But as the men who are chasing after me close in, he lifts his right hand, and a spark of electricity goes pulsating through both of his eyes and then shoots up out of the palm of his hand. "I'm not with them. I'm like you," he replies. So I hop in and he speeds away as I look back out the window and see that Logan and the men have just made it to the middle of the street where I was just standing. Now, not knowing this man who is sitting here beside me, I start going through a bunch of different scenarios in my head. And as I go through all of them, I look at the man beside me with a shocked look on my face and ask, "What have I gotten myself into?" Don't forget to subscribe for new stories weekly. See you next time on
Nina's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.